Throughout the many hours that we pump into Breath of the Wild, we encounter a large amount of different and unique enemies. Well, this got me thinking about all the possible new foes we could see in Breath of the Wild 2. This is obviously excluding the ones currently in Breath of the Wild, as most of these, if not all, are likely to make a return, especially the Lizalfos and of course the giant Hinox, and more than likely the deadly terrifying Lionel. Now of course, I can't imagine what newly created enemies Nintendo decides to invent for Breath of the Wild 2, but we can speculate about popular enemies in previous titles that could see a return in the upcoming sequel. One of the main ones that could see a return are the cloaked spirits called Poes that freely roam graveyards and other haunted locations about Hyrule and other lands. They carry a lantern with them that serves as a container for that specific Poe's soul. Poes are spirits of the dead that become monsters because of an unresolved attachment to the mortal world. Poes are known for being wicked, vengeful spirits. However, some Poes are helpful and serve as guides. Poes have appeared in many different Zelda titles, such as Ocarina of Time, The Wind Waker, and A Link Between Worlds, and honestly, the list really does go on. The Poes seen throughout the Zelda series really are an iconic piece of Zelda history. Everybody loves them and everybody remembers them, even when they are disappearing and reappearing to get the jump on Link, or just popping out of random places. And I'm pretty sure everyone remembers the giant Poes. They have been missing from the last couple of main Zelda titles, and I think it's time they make a return, and what better way to reintroduce them than with the release of the darker sequel, Breath of the Wild 2. Now, as I stated previously, and it's also pretty well known that Breath of the Wild 2 will have a somewhat darker atmosphere than that of the original Breath of the Wild. So as well as Poes, I could think of no other enemy darker than the legendary Gibdo. Gibdos are undead, mummified corpses, commonly appearing within graveyards and dungeons. They are one of the more resilient enemies in the Legend of Zelda series, as they are weak to very few weapons. Gibdos, like Poes, have appeared in many Zelda titles, but were really brought to life in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. These two games really showed us how creepy these things are. Their awful moaning noises and awkward movement send shivers down your spine, and not to mention what they do when they actually grab Link. They begin squeezing him, forcing his life to be drained. Their very gaze alone paralyzes Link. They are usually encountered in dark, damp places such as under gravestones or beneath wells hidden within the cracks and crevices. These guys are hugely popular and still one of the main topics within the Legend of Zelda. Like the Poes, these guys have been absent from recent Zelda titles, so it's only fair we see them in Breath of the Wild 2. I have my fingers crossed that they actually do come back. Armos, also known as soldier statues, are a recurring enemy in the Zelda series. Armos are stone or mechanical statues that come to life and attack Link. They are initially inactive and will activate and charge once disturbed. This makes for a seemingly good shock factor when you don't expect it to happen. Inactive Armos are commonly referred to as Armos statues. Some Armos are also explosive and will self-destruct after being attacked. They have featured in many Zelda titles and could possibly feature in Breath of the Wild 2. They may not be as popular as the previous two we have talked about, but it would still be interesting to see how they changed up the design and attacks of these enemies. I have to say that the version created for Twilight Princess is definitely my favourite, and if they decided to feature these guys as some sort of Guardian type enemy in Breath of the Wild 2, I personally think that would be awesome to see. Many may disagree with me on this one, but come on, these guys are so freaking cool. Wallmasters are monstrous hands that hang from the walls and ceilings, hence the name Wallmasters. But I guess they could also be called Ceiling Masters too. Anyway, they hang from the walls and ceilings of dark areas and dungeons attempting to grab Link. If they grab him, Link will be taken back to the beginning of the dungeon or a specific room within the dungeon. They are also able to rapidly regenerate themselves after being defeated. Not a whole lot is known about the Wallmasters, and they even go unnamed in Link's Awakening for Nintendo Switch. Nothing creeps me out more than hearing the whooshing noise as they attempt to land on Link after dropping from the walls or ceilings. Just the look of these things scare the life out of me. Their cold, dead, skinny pointed fingers just ugh. Okay, that's enough about them. So we finally reached the one you have all been waiting for. The strong and deadly, heavy armoured knights wielding a large sword and wide shield, the infamous Darknuts. These enemies are masters of sword fighting, seen most vividly during battles fought with them in Twilight Princess, where the differences in size between Link and the Darknut further emphasises his accurate behaviour. If you have ever fought a Darknut, then you know how deadly and terrifying these foes can be. Any new Legend of Zelda player would surely have a rough time with their first encounter with this beastly giant. If these monstrous knights appeared in Breath of the Wild 2, they could even rival Lynels in terms of battle difficulty. Everyone knows that Lynels are probably the hardest enemy to kill in Breath of the Wild, so imagine the Darknut being improved with new weapons and attacks to match the difficulty that Breath of the Wild has. If Darknuts make an appearance within Breath of the Wild 2, I would actually be buzzing, so let's once again cross our fingers and hope that we do. Now while I have missed a few major ones, such as Decobubbers or Tektites, and some would probably even add Dark Link, even though I think that one is pretty far-fetched. Not to say it wouldn't be cool or anything, because it definitely would, I just can't see how that would play out. But while I have missed a fair few, I just wanted to go over some of the ones that I know I would love to see come back in Breath of the Wild 2. These in my opinion are probably the most iconic and are my favourites, but I would also like to know your favourites, so drop a comment down below and let me know which enemy you would like to see return in Breath of the Wild 2. And also, if you did enjoy the video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up, and if you could subscribe to the channel, that would be really helpful. And as always, a massive thank you for taking the time to watch my videos.